So the initial stage of self-realization is not necessarily a stable one. So there will be a recognition of the truth of who you are, but that also seems to come and go until it's clarified. And then so it's not that who you are comes and goes, but the clarity of who you are comes and goes until that's sufficiently refined. And then there's a real clarity about who you are, that who you are is always here, never comes and goes, up until a point. Even though there's on some level a recognition of who you are, there's still some degree of ignorance, because there's still some sense that who you are is what is state dependent, because there will be a state, an experience in which the self is realized. And so then the common error is to mistake the state for who you are. So, you have some sort of transcendental experience, some kind of, very high spiritual experience, and there's a realization in that of freedom, peace, bliss, clarity, and a realization, and a truthful realization that's who you are. But then that state comes and goes, because it's a state, and all states come and go. I mean, if it has a beginning, it has an end, that's guaranteed. So it takes usually time, not always. There's no one size fits all approach in this regard, but in general, usually it seems that it takes some time for there to be a sufficient clarification on the fact that who you are is not the state. It's not dependent on the state, that it's what's always here. So there's still some attachment to the false identification that needs to be cleared away, but there is still some truthful recognition that's there from that point forward. So the importance of self-realization, again, is that finally, once there's at least that first glimpse of the truth of who you are, then you know that at least you have some reference point to recognize that who you are versus all of the content. So it's not that we have to make the content bad. It's not. It's also, it's an expression of who you are. It's a manifestation of let's call it divine will, divine desire. So it's not bad. It couldn't be. That's an impossibility. But it's dependent. It depends upon the independent reality. And so if you don't have that awareness of yourself, of your independent nature, then you're always fluctuating with the fluctuations. Whereas when there's a recognition of who you are as that independent reality, then there's some anchor there, so that regardless of the ups and downs, there's an ability to recognize that there's something that's not moving. There's something that's independent. There's something that's stable. There's something that doesn't have any fear or any concern, because it's unaffected by any of the content. Just like the space is unaffected by the objects that are moving in it, right? So you have a room, and you've got furniture in the room, and regardless of how you rearrange the furniture, the space is unaffected. The space cannot be touched by any of the furniture. So this is very, very important, because again, otherwise you're living in ignorance, and therefore you're going to suffer, because you're going to be chasing after all kinds of things that are not actually what you really want, because they'll all be based on this ignorance, where you think that you're something that needs these other things for its okayness, but those ideas of what it needs are always going to be distortions, because actually you don't need anything, because you already are the totality. You already are the completeness in which everything is coming and going, just the same as a dream is coming and going in the totality, in the completeness of your consciousness. And the benefit is that you're no longer living in ignorance, and you actually have some stability. So because you're recognizing your true independence. So then there's a lightness to everything. It's not that there's not still, like, if you're watching a movie, on some level, you know that you're not affected by the movie. The movie, you are independent of the movie. But the movie does tend to have a hypnotizing effect, in which there can still be some degree of identification with or entrancement with the movie, even though on a deeper level, you know your independence from it, such that you feel as though you're affected by the movie. And, if there's something surprising that happens in the movie, you might react to it. You might identify with the characters or sympathize with the characters, and so that can happen. So in a similar sort of way, even when you recognize the truth of who you are, there still may be that entrancement with the happenings of the ups and downs of the waking state or the dream state. Um, and so and that's why I'm saying it's going to normally, usually, it seems to be that this uh, experience of self-realization. So the self-realization is not an experience, but the experience of the self-realization is progressive. It happens in stages because there is this sort of progressive clarification that I am independent. I'm unaffected by all of this, but that's usually not going to happen just all of a sudden like that. So, so the initial opportunity, and again, there's not a one size fits all here, so anything's possible, but maybe on average, for what that's worth, the initial opportunity is to have the glimpse. And so that's really what I'm intending to offer with the meeting, and then to further clarify that glimpse so that it can become stabilized in your experience. And that allows you to actually begin to live authentically, to actually know who you are, to live authentically, so that your waking state expression and your dream expression can be in alignment with who you are. That it can be a conscious experience of divine expression.